Hello everybody, welcome back to Shatter Our Souls, and I want to thank everybody who has been patient as well as those who pointed out that I had some mic issues going on. Greatly appreciate, you are the real deal. Anywho, today we are going to be tackling the last of the Borderlands No Bullets run, excluding the final boss. And the reason I want to do it like that is because the final boss itself is very unique, especially as far as this particular run is concerned, and I believe that doing anything else would be an injustice. So, what's on the docket? First and foremost, we're going to be heading into another area nearby, and we're going to be dealing with Steel Trap. Now, Commandant Steel was the main antagonist, if you will, of the original game, the base game. And she is a very potent, powerful individual, modeled after the assassin squads of the Atlas crews. And so she's kind of a big deal, in and of the fact that she is potent, powerful, and capable of doing a lot. But her greatest weakness, if there ever was one, is the fact that she is relatively low DPS and high defense most of the time. So I'm not really sure how this encounter is going to go about. What I can say for sure is that this last section of the main game is actually, of this DLC, is actually well put together and is an absolute blast. So let me catch you up a little bit as to what's happened. This DLC has kind of 4 major sections to it. You have your opening section, you have the lead up to the first major task, the wired device, so on and so forth. So you get into Tartarus Station, and your first task is, I need to get Tannis some parts. It introduces the main villain as Claptrap, as well as his whole kind of gambit, his whole expectation of being this interplanetary ninja assassin. He is both incredibly powerful, but also incredibly well versed. He knows what he's getting into, and he knows full well that he can't beat you in a straight up fight. And so he has built a plan that is meant to overwhelm you. Now, I love this decision on behalf of the developers because it means that Claptrap knows full well that anything and everything he does is going to affect you and is going to come back in on him. Your second portion is, of course, dealing with the Hyperion Corporation. They have a plan to deal with Claptrap's absurd plan, and it all starts with getting power back to Tartarus Station. Without power, you can't get the rest or get to and from the other regions. So, you head into Sandra's Gorge, fight off a few dozen enemies, and life is great. You beat up everything in your way, and you're introduced to Nox Trap. Commander or General Nox from the Nox's Secret Armory, DLC, is a recurring enemy. He pops up as a mini-boss showcasing, yeah, everything you've done up to now comes back to haunt you. Love it. That moment solidifies that what you're getting into has been planned out for days, months, or even years prior. Claptrap knows what he's gotten into. He knows exactly what should be able to be. So you fight back and beat Nox Trap, and everything looks good. Your second task is to hit the factory, because by destroying the supply line effectively, you are capable of quelling the endless tide of machinery. Again, this step makes sense. If you continue to make more Claptraps endlessly, you're never going to be able to reach the end of it. Love it. That solidifies exactly what the game wants you to do and why. Perfect execution. No notes. The third and final task prior to fighting the big bad evil guy, is the wired device. It's a device that can be wirelessly connected to, wait, what? It's a wireless wired device? Of all the poor corporate decisions that was. Point being, the wired device has one goal. It is going to set up a connection with Claptrap and reset him to factory settings, making him, and everything he has done as the interplanetary ninja assassin, null and void. Again, love it. It sets up Claptrap as being a martyr of sorts, but it also explains why. Because they operate on a hive mind. If you deal with the original issue, the rest will fall. And so Hyperion wants to use the rest of the Claptraps that have been made in the future anyways. Perfect! That's what needs to happen. And so, he sends you off on your way to find this device, only to run into the next major boss. I love it. This DLC does so much for padding the world a little bit and helping understand the intricacies between the main villain of this arc, which is Claptrap, as well as a little bit more insight into another corporation, which is Hyperion. I think that's great. I feel as though this is something that should be given more attention. And I wish, desperately wish, that they could have done something of this nature a little more often. Now, whoa, okay, he just blew out. But the other part is that this DLC brings literally every enemy variety you have ever faced back to the forefront. You have the Atlas fighters, you have the Banditos, the Spider Ants, the Skags, the Racks, the Rack Hive even. You have all of these enemies from throughout the rest of the game that come back as a means of haunting you, really. And it makes sense. Now, I'm gonna kind of take a quick step back here, because I want to point something out that has always kind of bugged me and I found ridiculously funny. So you know how Hyperion has the new use station that allows you to resurrect yourself should anything go wrong? Well, the thing is that the new use station is something that I think doesn't get enough attention. Because if you really dig into it, if you really think about it, everybody has access to the new use stations, excluding like robots like Claptrap or something like that. Actually, yes, Claptrap has it too, now to think about it, because new U's were on Elpis. But the thing is that the new use stations are technically canon, as long as you're not in a cutscene. But it means that every time you go to face off against a boss recurring, you're just facing off against a new U version of that character. Sorry, had to let the recharge happen.
The key works. Soldier, get your team ready to go inside while I finish off. Wait, where am I? What happened to the vault? Why is this hole here?
I love Steel Trap. So, Commandant Steel being your next boss, she exists. She's pretty decent and is a challenge for most runs. Unfortunately, I've overleveled. So, that was very. Poor Steel Trap did not know what happened. That's okay. Anyways, we have now collected the final piece of the puzzle.
What? They've got the wire device? Too bad there are no plugs here. What do you mean it's wireless? Evolve the stupid... No matter. Let the oppressors come. Wait till they get a load of me.
And so we set up the final confrontation. Again, I like this. But as I was getting with the new U stations, New You works not just for you, but your villains. And you see it a little bit in a few places. One-Eyed Jack can be recurring if you want to grind out his weapon. You can battle against Nine Toes or Bonehead as many times as you want. There are only a couple minor entities in the entire game that don't have that New You capability. The Destroyer, Mad Mel, I think there's one other one, but I couldn't tell you offhand. But each of these entities that are unavailable to repeat battle have kind of a bit of a recurring circumstance. They're ones that are due to some external factor. The Destroyer didn't have any DNA registered, and didn't have a credit check to speak of. Mad Mel, I can't say offhand, but I would assume it has to do with the hijacking of the Digistruct system. But we also have, oh geez, what was the other one I had mentioned? Yeah, it'll come to me later. But the point is that these entities that don't have that ability have a specific reason behind it. Oh, Dr. Ned is another one that I didn't realize you couldn't rebattle. And it's partially because Dr. Ned's arena, where you would fight him in the zombie island, requires Dr. Ned to open the arena in battle. So once he's done, which I thought was an interesting circumstance. You can technically rebattle him in this DLC, but it's kind of 50-50. It's a good idea, it's just slightly off kilter in terms of how execution. So, where to next? What's gonna happen once Borderlands is done? Well, reality is I want to take a bit of a break from FPS, or at least this kind of FPS. And so, I want for the next series to go back to an older video, an older run I had, which was the Metroid series. The reason I want to go back to Metroid is because I have opinions on Prime 4 that need to be specified. And I feel no better place to put it than right where we're at. Anyway, with the Borderlands run, what technically could be another challenge if I were to go that route and do 2 more runs? Well, the first is we have to acknowledge that Borderlands 1 has a lot of different solutions. And having been able to beat the entire game, more or less, using only fisticuffs, kind of makes me question how far we could push other means. And so, I know I've done a run using only single-shot weapons, like the revolver and the sniper rifle. I know that I spent most of Borderlands 2 playing with just repeater pistols. Partially because I was like, oh, replayability, we can limit myself now and use something different later. Not my smartest move, by the way. But there are other options available at all times. These games have replayability. They're just not endlessly replayable. And I can't really make the game much harder than it already is without doing a pacifist run, which is only fighting enemies that have to be fought. Now, if I'm being honest, I don't think I'm going to be going to do that level of ridiculousness, but there is technically that possibility. Now, if I were to do it, how do I want to word this? Additional challenge runs could happen. That's not out of the question, that's not unexpected. But what could come of it is a little bit more questionable. So you could easily do a run with each of the varying weapon types. Snipers, assault rifles, revolvers, repeater pistols, you could use shotguns, you can use SMGs, you can use the Iridian weapons. That's fine. You could specialize in a specific elemental variety, focus in on corrosion or flame or shock or whatnot. that's fine. But by the time you get to a run where it is intended to be
opportunities
a
await.
one-off,
This is it. The most challenging and most final phase of Operation Trap Clap Trap Tap Trap. Operation Trap Trap Clap. Christ, that's a mouthful. I've entered the reboot sequence into the wired device. Now, all you have to do is get close enough to the original Ninja Assassin Claptrap to use it. Good luck. Oh, and please fill out a comment card if you somehow manage to survive. We care about your opinion.
damn, he's good.
Better get going.
There are options to do different types of challenge runs.
Welcome back.
And reality is, at least for myself, I like the idea of doing challenge runs because it takes what was different or unique about a game and tries to amplify it. A good one for that is I like using different weapons. You see Dark Souls tubers do it all the time, where they'll focus in on one weapon or another and showcase how that weapon interacts with the world as a whole. How would this one thing fit in with the world and actually work as a weapon for the completion of the game? That is totally reasonable. That is totally fair. Borderlands has something similar, but each weapon kind of has its perks and downsides. And reality is, a challenge run can be whatever you make of it. You don't need each area, each mission to work 100% of the time, every time. You need something that kind of breaks down every now and again. And so you could take off your shield, you could do it without grenades, you could do it without the use of class modifications or level ups. There's nothing stopping you. And that's kind of the thing I like about how Borderlands is built. There's nothing stopping it. Play it how you want to play it. And so, as an individual, I personally will always say that Borderlands is not perfect. Nothing is. But I will say that as a replayable, endlessly mess around game, it's got a pretty good bone structure. The greatest weakness, I feel, is that this game is best with friends. It's best with other people. And its online features were often hazy at best. Well, he definitely did his job right. So did he. What I'm getting at with that is, playing the game alone, you get the storyline, you get the ha-has. But the more characters, the more players you have involved, the more energetic, the more enjoyable the game becomes. Because everybody has a stake in it, everybody's trying to get, that moment in the sunshine, that spotlight moment. And it's fun. Like, endlessly fun. But there are moments that always made me feel like more. And that's a good thing. It is a somewhat addictive game. It has a level of constant growth, a level of constantly improving upon itself. In that way, Borderlands is unique. And I will give it credit where it is due, as well as the devs for doing so. Now, admittedly, what it became, comparatively to what it started as, is kind of questionable, as what it originally was intended to be was at least a little bit of a satire or a joke about how capitalism kind of messes with the status quo. But that's the thing, it's a bit of a one-off statement. Now, default bandits have shown up. Now, I actually kind of like this side mission. So, the default bandits are a resistance against the Claptrap Revolution. And the default system is just that. They are default. They're original. There's nothing modified about them. and there is only one spot of default enemies in the entire region after the revolution begins. Which again, I think is funny. I think it's well put together. And definitely something that is kind of on the funnier side, given how the world has been built up over time. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but it leaves a little bit of a question in the mind of the players. What could happen next? Could this resistance have gotten further? At least for me. Now, reality is, I think that the default bandits were fighting a losing battle given their location, but it is something to note. Anywho, that was weird. The default enemies are kind of guided by Default himself, who is I think, play on Sledge, or what's the word, yeah, I think he's a play on Sledge, to be honest, but with a assault rifle instead of a shotgun. No, he's more like a badass bruiser. But the thing is that as a character, he exists, he fights, and he's meant to be more of a one-off enemy. So I can't really say that he's expected to be all that powerful comparatively to the rest of everything. Anywho, with Default defeated, we have one more side mission that I want to complete before we get into the meat and potatoes of the end game here. Oh, well, maybe two. That depends. The first is Old Spicy. Now, Old Spicy is actually a take on the Old Spice deodorant and shampoo whatnot brand. I kind of like the idea behind Old Spicy. I think it's funny more than anything. Because Old Spicy is intended to be we are doing something, or we are trying to create a scent of some variety that Marcus could draw in the ladies. Which, oh my lord, that's terrible. But Old Spicy needs a few different pieces. First and foremost, we need the ability, or we need to get a rack hive and a bunch of skag glands. Why? No idea. We're gonna do it anyways. And then I believe we're gonna get the 11 herbs and spices to go with Rack Trap. Because let's be real, we need some herbs. Cooking is important, and if you don't do it right, it just ends up bland. So we're gonna make sure we get those herbs and spices as well. And then the Gauntlet. Now, the Gauntlet is a side mission of sorts that, not side mission, main mission, that really emphasizes the gravity of the situation. It is the battle that leads into fighting Claptrap or Minac directly. And it's absolutely beautiful. It is probably one of the best Gauntlet-style battles in the entire game as a whole. See, in Borderlands 1, there is the Moxxi's Underdome Riot, which I personally, I'm 50-50 on. It's a good concept, but poor execution. In it, you are supposed to survive against X number waves of enemies. If you die at any time, you end up starting back at an earlier point and you have to work your way back up. That's kind of the whole gist of Moxxi's Underdome Riot. And the problem that I ran into with that is that there's kind of three problems that arise from it. One is time investment. Two is it's obviously a mode designed around multiplayer. Like, without it, it is totally not a fun experience in the slightest. And the third, and arguably most important part, is that once you complete the main mission of that quest, that DLC, it updates the larger version. Now, the larger versions are evil. I'm going with evil. So, I, on a whim, attempted to beat the larger version of the Moxie's Underdome ride solo. And it was awful. Now, reality is that if you are going to do it in any capacity, it was pretty much expected that you were going to have to lock in. That you would be playing non-stop for about 6 hours straight. You needed to have your Mountain Dew and your Doritos prepped in advance, because there was no stopping once you started. Which is great. It put a little bit of onus on and meant that you and your friends could spend 6 hours together having a good old gabfest online and playing the game as you wanted to play it. I love that. I think that it was the right call to have multiplayer available. However, the time investment means that you are spending 6 hours non-stop fighting. And that's a level of locked in that most of us can't have. And so, when I played through it, when I actually got into and dealt with it, it was fun. It was enjoyable, but it was messy and tiring and exhausting. Because ultimately, I was trying to be a army solo. And it ended up being more than I could handle. This DLC, having a gauntlet-style mission that lasts half an hour, means that you can get in, battle each of the major rounds in this battle, or in this mission, and you come out the other side saying, that was fun, I could do it again. And you technically could. As soon as you are done dealing with Minat, you can go back to the main opening area of the DLC. Wow, that is bright. And restart the process in about 5 minutes. Meaning that at no point in time do you ever actually need to stop. If you want to do that gauntlet, go for it. It ends up being more contained. And it's one thing that I think they did actually rather well with that particular thing. Now, I oopsed here. So, the beastie goes non-solid for a couple moments, and you can glitch through it. However, once you leave the glitched version of the beastie, it becomes solid again. And I'm stuck between it and a truck. So, excuse me for resetting and heading back to the opening area because I couldn't move. Right now we have a couple minor things. We're going to deal with some skags quickly, which that's not a problem whatsoever. And then it's the gauntlet. Now, the skag side is going to be pretty simplistic, to be honest. It's a one-off, hey, how's it going? Knock in a couple monsters, and move on with our day. But, to be fair, it's one of those moments that I think could be given a bit more attention. And to explain what I mean by a bit more attention is just, this corner of the map exists for one side quest and one side quest only. It doesn't have the same impact that a lot of other regions did. And maybe that's by design. I can't speak on their behalf. Yeah, so we're gonna fight fire with fire. And fists. We must give them the good old punch. But I wish there was something more to it at times. Like, don't get me wrong, some games having a one-off region is good, but it has to have purpose to it. A one-off region like Sledge's Safe House is a perfect one, because it's intended to be built like a gauntlet. It is a one and done through the arena and you're done, right? You don't need to go back, you don't need to make 7 trips into there, because there's not much to discover. But it was fleshed out to some degree. This one was not. It just kind of existed. Alright, so we're about halfway through today, and these guys are falling like flies. They're just getting demolished. Now, if I could make a statement about Borderlands 1, I'm gonna say that what Borderlands 1 does the best out of the franchise is the loot. Now, don't get me wrong, other games have better loot systems in and of itself. I'm not going to say they don't. But, to explain what I'm getting at, every time I played Borderlands 1 and I got a new gun, I was like, oh yeah, this is pretty darn cool. This is fantastic. It can't get any better than this. And then half an hour later, I find something else that is fantastic in another way, and I'm thinking, huh, is this better or worse? And I sit there and I'm constantly making the same question. What is actually better or worse than the other? And I don't have an answer for that. Ultimately, it fell down to gameplay style, primarily. Now, there are some weapons that I wanted to find a better version of. There are some weapons I never found altogether. The Atlas Ares pistol, for example, is one that I always wanted to find but never could. Why? Because it wasn't in the cards. It wasn't something that the game wanted to give me. But if I did find one, there are 5 different versions of it, each that get progressively more difficult to find. And that's the beauty of it. Now, the Atlas Ares pistol is arguably one of the best weapons in the game, in that it is intended to be a perfect answer to survivability. Now, I'm going to kind of poke at this a little bit. Survivability in video games is kind of my metric for how strong a character is. If a character is incredibly powerful, like could obliterate everything in front of them but can't take a hit, they have low survivability. That's not to say that they're a weak character. They can obviously wreck everything in front of them. But when it comes down to that moment where the question is, can I survive this? And the answer is no, well, you got a bit more of a problem to deal with than you might initially expect. In Borderlands, your character is a high-end fighter. You are a soldier of some variety, a vault hunter, a certifiable, you are death on wheels, right? That is what you are expected to be.
Don't be shy. Come
No, I don't want to come in. No, I don't want to get the rack and spices. But the thing is that the Vault Hunter has survivability in spades. Between the shields, between the tools, between the guns, between the special abilities, every one of the Vault Hunters is easily the most resilient entities on the entire planet. And how they go about healing or fighting back against their opponents says a lot about how strong they actually are. Now, to kind of point at this and make a statement about it, I'm going to look at what I consider to be the strongest and weakest characters from a survivability standpoint. Now, the weakest character is actually Roland. Roland's whole gambit is that he has the aid station, specifically his Scorpion turret. And the Scorpion turret is absolutely, unequivocally one of the most powerful and dangerous tools in the Borderlands universe. But the problem is that his primary healing being through this aid station means that he's got to last a long time between uses, which might not give him the room he needs to grow. It might not give him what he needs to survive. Now, to be clear, his capstone ability does make it so that every single time he defeats an enemy, he heals. I am aware of this fact. But for the majority of the base game, that is not an option. in the case of Mordecai, every time his Bloodwing dives down and does damage to an opponent, he gets a massive amount of healing in comparison to other characters. And he gets it all in one shot, usually a full heal. So you want to throw your creature, your Bloodwing, out as often as possible because that's going to save your life. I know that. But then we've got other entities that have a bit more notable ones. If I recall accurately, Lilith's Firehawk phase shift heals her while she's in that mode, as does Brick's Berserk mode, meaning that both of these entities are significantly more dangerous in their special mode than the other two. They are the survival kings. Now, realistically speaking, a capstoned Roland is going to do incredibly well as long as he can continue dealing damage. But Brick and Lilith have an out that will get them out of any problem relatively easily. And for that reason, I can't say that they are, well, they're pretty darn strong. If I were to put it into survivability standpoint, now that I'm actually talking about it and thinking about it more directly, it's actually probably Mordecai at the bottom. With the capstone ability being what it is for Roland, he is probably mid-tier. He needs to make a KO to survive, meaning in a high-end one-on-one battle with an entity like, I don't know, Cromarax, he's got no healing. Or limited healing in that regard. And so, each character kind of has their niche when it comes to healing. Brick's whole gambit being about being able to punch his way through virtually anything, he is pretty well the epitome of I can take it down with my bare hands. He is the epitome of healing, and I won't deny that on numerous occasions I threw on his Berserk mode and ran straight into gunfire because I don't care. I'm healing faster than they're hurting, so deal with it, is kind of what it boiled down to. And maybe that's intentional. I don't know. If I were to say that each of the Vault Hunters was one stronger than the other, I don't think I would have a hard time saying that some of them felt stronger than others. I still feel like Roland doesn't have the damage output to compare to the other three, but I also don't believe that Mordecai has the healing to last in a drawn-out battle proper without relying, or he has the potential of falling very easily in a drawn-out battle. There we go. Brick has solutions left, right, and center, but his range suffers as a result. Lilith has the output, but she lacks the defense. Every character has something that they're good at and something they struggle with. And so maybe it's just me pointing at something and saying, this is funny, this is my call, but I've always felt like there was more to it. That there was always nuance between the characters. Now, to be clear, by endgame, they're pretty well the same anyways, but the nuance between how each character functions is important to me. It means that every character has something that draws you to them individually, uniquely. Again, this is a good thing. Borderlands kind of aces a lot of the heavy hitters. And that's good. If I were to go further on the concepts that they created, I believe that they should have made maybe one or two more classes, although I realize that's a bit difficult. Now, I'm going to point at Borderlands 2 and the pre-sequel here. because I do believe that there are some analogs that could be made. The first and foremost is Axton. Axton and Wilhelm are the soldier class of their particular games. Both of them have an evolution of Roland's ability. One where he can now stick his station pretty much anywhere you want to put it, which means that you are not limited in what you can accomplish based on location alone. I like that. The other has little turrets that fly around like drones and heal/do damage at all times. Wilhelm and Axton are very much evolutions of Roland's abilities, but they're not done in a way that I feel is broken or outside the realm of expectations for what an evolution could be. Theoretically, if you wanted to throw Roland into the other two games, he would fit. He just would be a weaker alternative. And I want to be clear, every Vault Hunter that has ever existed in Borderlands would, theoretically, fit within the universe of the other games. They just wouldn't necessarily be ideal. Zero is an evolution of Mordecai, as well as I believe it's Aurelia in the pre-sequel. Don't quote me on that, please, because it's been a while. But they're both snipers in and of itself. But Zero has a little bit of a... Zero focuses in on two extremes. He is both a Mordecai in that he focuses in on sniping and long range, but he's more Brick in that he focuses in on close range combat where it matters. And you can make a very potent close range combatant and a very potent long range combatant. Whatever it is that suits your needs, Zero fits it. Well, we could take this a step further. What else do we have? Well, we have Maya with the phase lock. Now, she has the most common analog being Lilith, but she also has a little bit more of a Roland style in that her whole gambit focuses in on holding enemies in place and then dealing damage to them in that way. I like it. I think it works. What else do we got? Well, sorry, finished the mission, had to, I just reset because it's faster. What else do we have? Well, what about the Necromancer, Gage? Gage is weird, and is honestly probably one of my favorite characters in the entire franchise for that reason. Gage is the Necromancer. And as a character, Gage has a few abilities that mesh, that combine pieces of the other characters. Now, she fits Mordecai to a degree. You create or summon her companion or partner character, and it goes out and does damage for you. Love it. DT is perfect in that regard. But there's another character that crops up in the midst of this that she fits nicely, and that is she fits Lilith, in that she focuses in on high output weapons. Now, without going too far into why I think that's awesome, the high output weaponry system really does her a lot of favors, because she is a close range combatant, high-end output that uses the best of Lilith's capabilities and uses the best of Mordecai's capabilities one-on-one. And I think that that is beautiful. And I wish, against all hope, that they continue to make characters that have that level of, I can do something better with this, couldn't I? And so, maybe it's just me, but I feel like every Vault Hunter we have ever seen
If you get horribly
grows
maimed, scarred, or disfigured,
comparatively
we can
to the other
always bring you
character,
back
to
to the
what
shop for a
we
quick
had
tune-up.
before.
Oh, wait.
But I also
No, we
feel
can't
like it would
because
be
you're not a
fun
robot.
or interesting to
You're a stupid,
have
fleshy human.
a Borderlands built with every Borderlands Vault Hunter design, so to speak, that builds on the prior one. A difficulty system, if you will, where, yeah, you could use Axton's build, or you could use Roland's build. Technically, they could both exist at the same time, but whichever version you went with, controlled your outcome. So, maybe that's me. I think that would be pretty cool. Anyways, I would like to add that now that we are officially into the kind of final leg of this, let's quickly break down each boss.
Pawns truly think you can defeat the combined might of a planet full of freeware freedom fighters? No longer bound by the firewalls of oppression? Then come and face the full wrath of the revolution. Round 2, fight!
We start by battling out against General Noxtrap. Now, General Noxtrap is probably and unironically the strongest of the fighters that we have to deal with in this particular run. Now, the reason that he is the strongest has to do with the fact that he has the best armor, a get off me, and he is also unaffected by elemental resistance, meaning that every single punch you make is an individual punch. He has high output, and he has the kamikaze traps, which deal damage to you consistently. So it would be best, in my opinion, to make sure that we can build it up. He's kind of I want to call him both a warm-up and the biggest challenge. Because if he is the warm-up character, he just kind of exists. Most of the time, he is easy enough to defeat, and that's kind of the problem. As a brawler style, he lacks nuance. You run in, you bonk him a couple times, and he's done, right? He doesn't have anything huge going for him. He just kind of exists, and that's the biggest problem for him. However, as a character, yeah, this particular run, he is going to be our biggest pain, because Noxtrap has many options that are anti-break, which is a pain. But, yeah, major pain here, didn't have any, I don't think we have any major concerns about that either. So, yeah. Anyways, with him down, we go to the second round. Now, the second round is against Dr. Ned, round 2. Now, I feel like I've neglected to mention that before fighting the factory, we fought against Dr. Ned in standard human form. Dr. Ned, round 2,
A minor setback. You will never silence the rallying call of liberation.
is exactly the same except bulkier,
For all.
which means we can fight him off pretty reasonably. Again, you can't really melt already dead flesh, so part of our kit is not going to work 100%. But that's really no big concern, considering he has very limited potency to his power altogether. Now, does anybody know what that actually says? I would love to know,
How do you like them out?
just out of curiosity.
I see 3 flashing red
Oh,
lights.
perfect. 3 flashing red lights.
You will always fail as long as the children of the revolution are willing to fight against their former masters in order to protect me, their master. Hold on, that came out wrong.
So... I personally believe that this is going to be one of those sections that does do a lot. Now, when it comes to Dr. Ned Trap, specifically Undead Ned Trap, he doesn't have defense. His output kind of is more of the same as to what he was in his DLC, except instead of zombies, he is pulling out kamikaze traps. But the kamikaze traps are weak to corrosion damage, so he's actually not that bad. This is kind of a consistent problem that I'm running into now. It could just be that I'm over-leveled because I'm 6 levels higher than even the final boss of this entire region. But technically, Nox Trap is a bit of a concern. Anywho, with that being said, Undead Ned Trap, here we go. And oh wow, that's really easy actually. Oh wow, does he ever fall fast. Cool. So, round 2 done, apparently. I also find it funny that the red is blood is replaced with blue for circuitry.
Larger setback. Still, you must be hurting by now. Tell you what, surrender and we'll only publicly torture you a little bit. And you don't even have to be conscious for most of it.
Yeah, I don't want to be tortured. Let's keep going. Third and finally is a rematch with the boss we fought at the beginning of the video, which means this'll be a cakewalk. I personally don't mind one way or the other, it's just kind of exists. Fun fact, you need guns to be able to unlock that side door, which is kind of a problem for the, you know, pew-pew-less run. But I refuse to use pew-pews because I desperately want to showcase that you can beat the game without guns. And that's that. Oh. Without firing a gun, without putting your finger on the trigger.
I defeated my zombie doctor, but they impale in comparison to my next warrior. Get it? Because she's got like a big hole in the... screw it. Kill them!
Okay, seriously. No bosses here. Yes, there's a boss here. Anyways, if you like what you see and would like to see the finale, please drop a like, please leave a subscribbler. I would love to see it. And, hey, get back here, Steel Trap. If there is anything that you're curious about or would like to see in the future, I would love if you left a comment down below saying, hey, this is what I would like to see.
I was hoping it wouldn't come to this.
Anywho,
Who am I kidding?
with all of that being said, I hope you all have a good one.